Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going deep on something pretty interesting.
Yeah,
Serbia's military.
it's wild.
They've got this surprisingly diverse arsenal. I mean,
Yeah.
weapons from like everywhere you can think of: Russia, the U.S., China, Israel.
It's really a case study in
Let's
how
go.
nations are navigating, a complicated world.
Yeah, and for folks out there who follow, international relations, like if you're prepping for the UPSC exams,
Yeah, definitely.
this is going to be super relevant. So let's break it down. The big thing that's got everyone talking is Serbia's recent deal with Israel's Elbit systems
Right?
for the POS artillery rocket system and the Hermes 900 drones, cutting-edge stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Those are significant upgrades. The
Mhm.
PLS system is particularly interesting. It's basically a multi-caliber rocket launcher, meaning it can hit targets.
So wait, does that mean it can shoot different types of rockets?
Yeah, exactly. Depending on the mission, you can tailor the range and the firepower.
Huh.
You can even mount it on different platforms like trucks or tracked vehicles, which
Yeah.
adds to its adaptability.
Okay, so like a Swiss Army knife for artillery.
Exactly. Super versatile. And then you've got the Hermes 900 drones. They're these medium altitude, long endurance drones
Yeah.
that are going to give Serbia a huge boost in their intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities. That's ISR for short.
So basically, they've got a much clearer picture of everything happening around them.
Exactly.
Okay, but why this sudden push for, such advanced weaponry?
Well, look at the regional dynamics. It's probably a response to Croatia getting the U.S. HIMARS system recently, another advanced rocket artillery system.
Hmm?
Serbia and Croatia have this rivalry going back to the Balkan Wars in the 90s.
Right.
And these military acquisitions are a reflection of that tension that's still there.
It's like a strategic dance.
Yeah.
Everyone's watching what the other side is doing. But here's the thing. Serbia's military isn't just about fancy new Israeli tech.
Right.
They've got a mix of weapons from all over the place.
Oh, yeah. Serbia's arsenal is incredibly diverse. They still use a ton of equipment from the US, France, and Germany.
Seriously. I mean, given what happened with the NATO bombing in 1999,
Right.
I wouldn't expect to see Serbian forces using, like, French fighter jets, for example.
I know. It seems counterintuitive, but it shows their pragmatic approach to things. They're not turning their backs on the West entirely, despite those past conflicts.
So it's not a simple us versus them situation.
Not at all.
They're keeping their options open. Okay, but what about Russia? A lot of Serbia's military hardware is still from the Soviet era, right?
Yeah, you can't ignore those historical and cultural ties between Serbia and Russia. They've still got MiG-29 fighter jets, T-72 tanks, all inherited from back then. That legacy is still shaping their capabilities. But there's another player in this mix that makes Serbia really stand out in Europe.
You're talking about China.
Exactly. Serbia is the only European nation using Chinese-made weaponry. That's a pretty bold move, considering how things are right now.
Totally. And I've read that this trend has been growing, especially with Russia's focus shifting to the conflict with Ukraine.
That's right. Serbia has acquired things like the FK-3 air defense system. It's comparable to the Russian S-300. And they've got the CH-92A combat drones, all from China.
That's a lot to juggle. It's like Serbia is playing this high-stakes diplomacy game, trying to balance relationships with all these global powers that often have competing interests.
Yeah, you could say that. But it's not just about collecting weapons. There are deeper strategic motives at play.
Okay, so now things are getting really interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and that's exactly what we're going to dig into in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned. Okay, so we know Serbia has this really diverse military arsenal, like a global arms bazaar. But what's the strategy here? Why not just, pick a side and stick with one supplier?
Well, there are a few reasons, and it's all connected. One of the main things is that they're trying to stay neutral. Serbia has always been at the crossroads of different geopolitical forces. So by getting their weapons from all over the place, they're trying to avoid being too reliant on any one power.
So it's about staying independent in a world where powerful countries are always trying to push their influence around.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Especially given Serbia's history of being caught in the middle of things.
Makes sense. It's like a hedging strategy.
Exactly. In a world where everything's changing all the time, Serbia is protecting itself from risk.
That reminds me, you mentioned Croatia getting the HIMARS system. Seems like Serbia's deal with Israel for the PLS system is a direct response to that.
Oh, there's definitely an element of that. It shows another reason behind all this regional security. Serbia is surrounded by NATO members.
Right.
And even though they have these diplomatic relationships with the West, they still have to be able to defend themselves if things go south.
It's like a giant chess game. You're always thinking about the other guy's next move.
Ugh.
But going back to this hedging idea, does that go beyond just political alliances.
For sure. Diversifying their arms sources also protects them from sanctions or supply disruptions. Let's say one supplier suddenly cuts them off from weapons or spare parts.
Right.
Serbia would still have other options.
That's like diversifying your investments.
Yeah,
You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, especially with all the geopolitical uncertainty.
exactly. And remember, Serbia has been hit with sanctions before. This way they can navigate all that with more confidence.
So neutrality, security, risk management, all good reasons.
Yeah,
But is there anything else? Anything economic, maybe?
that's a good point. By working with a bunch of different suppliers, Serbia can use that competition to get better deals on these weapon systems.
Supply and demand.
Exactly. It's not just about the hardware, it's about being smart and negotiating from a position of strength.
So they're playing the game.
Yeah.
And is there any advantage when it comes to technology?
Oh, absolutely. They could benefit from technology transfer. Working with countries like Israel and China that are known for their tech advancements could give Serbia access to valuable knowledge and expertise.
Yeah, that makes sense. For a country like Serbia with limited resources, it's like a shortcut to boosting their own defense industry and their tech capabilities.
Exactly. And that brings up another interesting thing. Serbia is not just buying ready-made weapons, they're looking to co-develop and co-produce systems with their partners.
So everybody wins. Serbia gets cutting-edge tech, and the supplier gets a foothold in a new market. But all this balancing must be pretty challenging.
Oh, yeah. Keeping this all going requires some serious diplomatic skills and, a deep understanding of how global power works.
One wrong step and the whole thing falls apart. What are some of the risks?
Well, one risk is that this whole be friends with everyone approach could backfire. Trying to please everybody might make them look untrustworthy or opportunistic.
So there's a fine line between being flexible and being seen as playing both sides. Are there other downsides?
Yeah, there's a chance that Serbia's neighbors might see this military buildup as a threat, and that could lead to more instability in the region, maybe even an arms race.
That's a worry.
Mm.
If other countries feel threatened, things could escalate. So we've looked at why Serbia has this multi-sourced military strategy, the push for neutrality, security, economic benefits, even technological advancement.
But it's complicated, and there are definitely some potential downsides.
Which leads to the big question. Can Serbia keep this up? Or will they eventually be forced to choose a side? So we've been talking about Serbia and their military strategy, this idea of getting weapons from all over the place. It's a risky move for sure, but can they actually pull it off long term?
That's the big question. It might help to look at some historical examples like the non-aligned movement during the Cold War.
Oh, yeah.
Countries like India and Indonesia managed to balance between the US and the Soviet Union for a while.
It's like playing both sides, right? Did it work for them?
Yeah, for a while they definitely got some advantages from it. But the Cold War was a different time. The world's a lot more complicated now. You've got all these different power centers and alliances are constantly shifting.
So things are less predictable.
Hmm.
What could happen that might force Serbia to change course?
Well, they could be put under more pressure from either the West or Russia. Imagine if there's a major conflict and Serbia is forced to pick a side. That would really put their balancing act to the test.
It's like they're constantly having to adjust their position based on what's happening in the world.
Right.
But there's also the internal situation. Do they have the diplomatic skills and the political will to keep this up?
That's a really important point. This whole strategy requires a lot of political maneuvering and a deep understanding of international relations. They need to be consistent and have a clear vision for where they want to go. If there's any political instability or changes in their foreign policy goals, things could fall apart pretty quickly.
So it's not just about the weapons. It's about having the right people in place and a long-term plan. It shows that even in a world dominated by superpowers, smaller countries can still make their own choices and forge their own path.
Exactly. Serbia is a great example of that. It's a fascinating case study in strategic autonomy and the challenges of staying neutral in a world that's so divided.
So we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about Serbia's unique approach to getting weapons, the reasons behind it, and the potential risks and rewards. It's a topic with global implications, that's for sure, and it's something that anyone interested in geopolitics or international relations should be paying attention to. Especially if you're prepping for the UPSC exams, this kind of analysis is super valuable. What were your main takeaways?
I think the big thing for me is that global power dynamics are constantly changing, and it'll be interesting to see how Serbia adapts. Can they maintain this balancing act, or will they have to pick a side? Only time will tell.
And that's the question we'll be watching closely. But for now, we want to hear from you. What do you think about Serbia's strategy? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the most fascinating stories from around the world. Until next time, keep exploring.